Welcome, everybody. As introduced, my name is Mike Jettie. I am a federal prosecutor from the United States. I've been a federal prosecutor for approximately 20 years, and the majority of my cases in the United States center on white-collar crime, public corruption, and terrorism finance cases. And I've been asked to do a presentation on crypto, blockchain, and the dark web, and answer questions you may have. The goal of today is not to teach you. Obviously, you are the experts on Pakistani criminal law. The goal today is to talk to you and to give you vocabulary on crypto and blockchain and how criminals may or may not be using it to facilitate money laundering and terror finance. And during the presentation, if you have a question, do not hesitate to ask. Oftentimes, when we do these presentations, if you wait to ask the question, oftentimes people forget to ask the question. So be yourselves, be your judges, be the judges you are, and interrupt counsel. I won't take offense to it. I'm interrupted all the time by judges back in the United States. So once again, my name is Mike Jettie. I am a federal prosecutor, and I have probably in my career have handled 30 to 40 cases involving crypto and the blockchain and or dark web. So I have done presentations here in Pakistan and the Philippines on these subjects, and really basically to help out investigators and prosecutors, um, help bring cases forward and provide evidence that is admissible in your courts. So before we get going, does anyone have any basic questions or subjects they want to make sure I cover? I want to make sure that our agenda here is to go for about an hour and then to open it up for Q&A at the end. But like I said before, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. Do we have any questions before we get going? I'm assuming everyone can hear me okay. And Yasir, who is the LAS here at the embassy, who is remarkable, he is monitoring the chat room and will be assisting me in any questions. If you feel more comfortable in Urdu, feel free to communicate with him in Urdu, and he'll communicate with me. I'm not going to be toggling back and forth with my screen. I'll just be on the my PowerPoint. So if there's no questions, I'll give a second here if there's any questions. If there's no questions, I'll get going.
Hi,
Yeah,
Jettie.
see,
I
do we
haven't
have any
seen nothing in the chat box yet, but if something does come up, then I'll let you know.
Okay, let's get going. So I always start off with, this is a cartoon and it's more in jest, but you can always do this easily online. Most white collar crime no longer involves a bank robber coming into a bank with a gun. Matter of fact, the average bank robbery in the United States nets a defendant $200 in the United States. There's roughly 8,000 bank robberies in the United States, and they net about $200. 99.9% of the time, the defendant is caught within an hour of the bank robbery. So, but when you talk about white collar crime, the average theft, embezzlement is over $2 million. So nowadays we've moved crime from the gun and the robbery style to the white collar embezzlement and things like fishing, spear fishing, and things like that. So this is where crime has progressed to, is online cybercrime, using digital assets to commit laundering and terror financing. We're going to start off with some misconceptions first. And so there's a lot of misconceptions about crypto, the dark web, and the blockchain. Let's talk about the web. I think everyone is familiar with when we hear the web, but the web is oftentimes thought of as three different parts of the web: surface web, deep web, and dark web. And normally I would ask this question when we're live, but since we're doing this online, I'm just going to go right through without a Q&A here. Most of the time, people refer to the surface web as the publicly searchable website. So you today, and hopefully none of you are doing it now, but hopefully today you guys most likely have been on news sites and YouTube, things that are publicly searchable, which are free to everyone to look at. So your news, your sports, your blogs, your shopping sites, that's what we call the surface web. And the surface web is only about 10% of the web. Only 10% of the web is the surface web. 90%, the rest of the web, is what we call the deep web. And the deep web constitutes things that require permission. So your emails that require your email address and your password, your bank information, your bank services, anything that your Netflix, your Prime Video, your whatever streaming services you have, that's what we call the deep web. The deep web is 90% of the web. And it basically is just a permission only system of the web. It's still part of the web, but it's called the deep web because it requires a username and password to get access. And then last but not least, the dark web. The dark web is part of the deep web, and it requires a special browser to access. And the most famous one is the Tor browser. And the reason it's called the dark web is because the websites on the dark web are not indexed, which means when you go onto the dark web, you simply can't type in a search and find all the websites on the dark web. There are websites which are purposely hidden from view, and that's why it's called the dark web. The second reason it's called the dark web is when a person searches on the dark web, they're anonymous. There is no way for anyone, including the United States with all its assets and resources, can track anyone on the dark web. We'll talk about why that is in a sec, but that's the two reasons why it's called the dark web. It's permission only, it requires a special browser and access, and your searching is anonymous. But when we talk about the web, we use surface, deep, and dark, but the web is not, there's no such thing as the surface, deep, and dark on the web. It's just one website. So let's make sure we all understand the same vocabulary. So when you have litigants in your courtroom, we all make sure we all have the same vocabulary. What is the internet? The internet is different than the web. The internet is a network of servers across the world. That's what the internet is. And the web is all the websites on those servers. So we all understand what the difference is. The internet is the computer network. The web is all the web pages found on those networks. All you have to do is create a website and host it on a server. So Yasir today can create a website, and as long as he can get someone to host it on a server, Yasir could have his own server, but he can go to Amazon Web Services or Google and host that website on a server. And there is no difference between surface, deep, and dark. There is none. It's all part of the same web. The difference is who has access and how searchable it is. That's the only difference. And so we think of surface, deep, and dark, but there really is no surface. There is really no surface, deep, and dark. It all based upon accessibility and searchability. That's all it is. Some websites are just not searchable, and that's what we call the dark web. You see the little diagram, all the internet servers. There are some websites, I highlight the yellow, outside of on those servers which are not searchable. And it's only a few websites that are not searchable when you're on the dark web. Most websites are searchable on the dark web. I can do my banking on the dark, quote unquote, dark web. I can do my Amazon buying. I can look at the New York Times. I can look at the Dawn. I can look at any news sites I want on the dark web. We don't choose to do so We want to talk about why we don't do that, but there's nothing that prohibits me from using the dark web to do all my internet searching. Let me just pause. Someone's marking up on the screen, Yasir. Someone's, does anyone see that?
ये स्क्रीन पे कुछ लाइंस लग रही हैं, प्लीज ये देख लीजिए, हो सकता है गलती से लग रही हूँ, वो थोड़ा सा डिस्ट्रैक्ट कर रही हैं. थैंक यू. गो अहेड जेटी.
Thanks. All right, let's talk about the dark web because that's everyone's most interested in. From now on, I'll keep it segregated. Surface web, deep web, and dark web. I'll keep it segregated. Just know that there's no technical segregation of the web. It's just the web, and the different layers is based upon accessibility and searchability. But there is no segregation technically. But let's just we'll delineate the dark web. The dark web, it's easy, secure, and legal. You enter it by having a browser, the Tor browser. You see it. You can download it on your iPhone. You can download it on Android. It's accessible on all computers. It's free of charge. It's free. And does anyone know, if anyone knows right off the bat, does anyone know who has created the Tor browser? Who created it? There's a handful of browsers that give you access into, quote, the dark web, but the Tor browser, the one we see here in the purple, this is the most famous. It's used by 90% of the people who search the dark web. This Tor browser was developed and created by the U.S. government. And the Tor browser routes traffic through a Tor network. We're going to see a picture of that in a second. And then you can visit and shop and communicate. And as you see the picture, there's some bad things on the dark web, but there's bad things on the surface web too. There's illegal porn, there's illegal markets, there's money laundering. But there's also good things like political dissidents. You may not think it's a good thing, but the reason why the US supports the dark web is because one of its chief goals is First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and freedom of association. And so the dark web provides an opportunity for people who live in countries, i.e. China, to communicate with each other and associate with each other without the government being able to shut down their ability to communicate. So, and then you exit, you sign off, and you can buy and sell. And then typically when people buy and sell, they use a credit card. And then here comes crypto in 2008, 2009. Crypto comes along, and it was a different way of paying for things on the dark web. This is the only time where the two worlds collide. The dark web and crypto have nothing to do with each other except for buying something on the dark web. You could buy things on the dark web with your basic credit card, or you can buy, some websites allow you to buy with crypto, but crypto can be bought. You can use crypto on surface web as long as a vendor or a seller is willing to accept crypto. Crypto is itself not an evil thing. It's just an opportunity for someone to use a different payment method. That's all crypto is a payment method. So here you go. You enter the dark web, you visit, shop, and communicate, and then you exit and you sign off. And if you're buying and selling, you buy and sell with a credit card, or nowadays you could buy with crypto. Okay. And the relationship between the dark web and crypto, here's crypto, and here's a small intersection between these two worlds. They don't communicate with each other except for a payment method. So as you see a case come in, the dark web and crypto they're not the same thing, and they're not associated with each other. Crypto is just a payment method. Now, crypto and criminal activity is a different story. Crypto is being used to money launder, and in rare cases used to terror finance. But money laundering is by far the most common use of crypto. The illegal use of crypto is money laundering. It's a way for criminals to store money away from, quote unquote, from authorities, and a way for them to transfer money from one party to another party, thinking that their transfers are anonymous. And you can see where money laundering interacts with the dark web too. So the dark web is not illegal. There's nothing illegal, quote unquote, about the dark web. Remember, there's no delineation on the web between surface, deep, and dark. It's all just one web. However, to keep it simple with the dark web, It's just there's nothing illegal about having an anonymous part of the web. There's nothing illegal about the dark web, nothing at all. There are criminal activity on the dark web, and we'll talk about that in a sec. All right, Tor browser, this is your way to get into the dark web. Like I said before, the Tor browser was developed by the US Navy. It's an onion routing project. We're going to see that in a sec. And the reason the US still supports the dark web, including other governments, like I told you, is political dissidence. It's an ability for people to communicate with each other without the fear of government eavesdropping on their communication. So the US holds that value high, and so we will support that value across the whole world. So, matter of fact, Hong Kong protests that happened a few years ago, a lot of it was a lot of the associations among the members were done were done on the dark web using the Tor browser. So that dissidence, that movement in Hong Kong was supported by the dark web, i.e., using Tor to get access to this communication platform. All right, this is a typical web search. So I have YouTube on the right hand side, and YouTube. Let's just for argument's sake, YouTube. This gentleman on the left, he posts let's just say a child pornography video on YouTube. YouTube they didn't scrub it in time, and let's just say it was posted for 10 minutes. And now we want to know, as law enforcement, who put that up on the website. And so typically law enforcement will serve legal process on YouTube. They send a subpoena to YouTube. YouTube, tell me who put this web page on your system. YouTube comes back and gives me an IP address. That IP address is 72.77 and so forth. They give me an IP address. Not much I can do with an IP address. So I take that IP address, I tell my investigators, go talk to the service provider. That's the service provider is in the middle. They're the ones that connect my user to YouTube. There's service AT&T, Comcast, whoever's local here in Pakistan. You tell them, I want to know who owns the IP address. So I serve legal notice on the service provider. They tell me that IP address belongs to the gentleman on the left. I don't know if it's this guy specifically, but it gives me the actual physical address of where that website was created. I tell my investigators to go knock on the door and go interview the people at that address to find out who put the child pornography page up on YouTube. This process is how we normally do it. And this process takes months and months and months, especially for Pakistan, because YouTube is in the United States. And to get YouTube to provide any information to Pakistan authorities, we have to go through the mutual legal assistance agreements with each country. And it takes time. This training is not meant to talk about MLAs. However, that takes time. This process with an MLA will take 6 to 7 months. It's a long period of time for this information to come into your courtroom. So when a prosecutor has it in front of you and says, this is the information we have, and if you request them to find out who belongs to this IP address, understand this information will take time to get into for the investigators to find and then submit to the prosecutors. So that's how it normally works, right? This is not the dark web. This is not anything. This is a normal search on what we call the surface web. This is the dark web. So my user here, my Tor user on the left, is now accessing the web using a Tor browser, right? And the Tor browser allows me to search the web, and it routes my search. It routes my search through 15 different servers, which rotate. So let's just walk through my example. Let's just say my user on the left posts a child porn video on YouTube. YouTube didn't take it down in time. And so they had posted and they scrubbed it, but we still want to know who put up on the website this child pornography video. So we go legal process to YouTube, and YouTube gives me an IP address of 89.79 on the right-hand side, just like before. The difference now is when I take that IP address and go to my service provider, see the green arrow on the right hand side of that green arrow, my service provider, that server, they tell me the IP address pinged off another server, the red line. And it tells me it pings off. I serve paper on that server, and it tells me it pings off another server. It does that for 15 different servers before it comes to my end user. But it's more difficult than that because it rotates. There are currently over 2 million servers that the Tor browser uses on the dark web, 2 million. And my signal rotates every 15 minutes on 15 different servers. So it's impossible for me to, improbable, not impossible, improbable for me to track. But not only that, is when I serve paper, serve legal process on YouTube, and I get the IP address 89.79. Let's just, and 89, that first server in green, we're assuming that server is in a country which recognizes our subpoena power. That server could be located in Russia. That server could be located in the basement of the country of Georgia. It could be in the basement of someone in Scotland or some country in Africa. It could be in Nigeria. And they may not recognize any legal authority. It could be in the basement of an 18-year-old kid. So our investigation to track down who put that website up on YouTube when they use a Tor browser is impossible. I'm gonna say it's improbable, but I'm gonna go all the way out. It's impossible. So if you're demanding, or a defense attorney says to you says, Judge, the prosecutor has yet to tell you who put this website up on using conventional methods of subpoena power, the prosecutor is going to tell you they use the Tor browser, which makes it impossible for us to track this IP address, the IP address, the Tor user on the left-hand side. It's impossible. So get rid of the expectation that your investigators in your case or the prosecutor in your case can track this down. If they use the Tor browser to get it into the dark web, it's improbable that they'll ever find out using this method to find the user. And that's what makes it what we call the dark web. It makes your searching anonymous. There is no way for me as law enforcement, even if I was NSA or CIA or an intelligence gathering entity from a country, there's no way, even with that, all those toys and all that assets and resources, there's no way for me to find that Tor user. I'm going to tell you how many different variations. This is a fun stat. Everyone here knows a deck of cards, a 52 cards in a deck. If I were to shuffle 52 cards randomly, sufficiently enough, and lay them out in sequential order, that's the first time human eyes most likely has ever seen that sequence of 52 cards. The number of 52 cards, the number of variations of 52 is if every variation was 1 second, you had to go back 13 billion years and go forward 10 billion years. So that's only 52 cards. The dark web is made up of 2 million servers. There's no way for us to track because there's too many variations and it rotates. The Tor browser was meant to hide, to make someone anonymous, and it does a really good job of doing so. Okay. There's nothing illegal about it, except there's people who do illegal things on the dark web. And here's an example of Alpha Bay. Alpha Bay is a marketplace that you can buy illegal goods on. And you can buy fraudulent goods, drugs and chemicals, counterfeit items, weapons, all sorts of things, right? And your question is, well, why do criminals even have a marketplace? Well, if you think about it, if your websites on the dark web are not, most of them are not searchable, which means I can't go in there in the Google box and type in AK-47s because no one's going to advertise them, right? the seller of that website, the seller of those guns need to go to a marketplace to sell their guns. And here comes a marketplace where buyer and seller gets together, because bad guys create bad products to make money. The whole goal here is to make money, except barring the child pornography stuff, that's a whole different ball game. Most criminals are in the business to make money. They're selling weapons, drugs, counterfeit items. They're there to sell items to make money. And the marketplaces like Alpha Bay create where a buyer and seller can get together. So here's an example of one. All right, and that is it to the dark web. All right, there's nothing complicated about the dark web. Crypto, its involvement in the dark web is very limited. The only crypto that's used on the dark web is when you buy something. And most people still buy things on the dark web using a credit card, right? So, any questions on the dark web? All right, I don't see, Yasir has not come back with any questions. Let's talk real briefly about the blockchain, because for us to understand crypto, we have to understand the blockchain a little bit. All right. This is not, before we get going, this is not an investment course, and I'm not going to go into the weeds of all the stuff that we can teach on blockchain. This is only meant to be an hour long, so we need to keep it short and brief. When we talk about the blockchain, we're only going to talk about the public blockchain. There's private blockchains in the world. Your bank most likely uses a private blockchain. We're not talking about private blockchains. We're talking about the public. And when you read it in the paper, you most likely are reading about a public blockchain. And public blockchain is a decentralized ledger, right? A ledger is you keep track of debits and credits, what pluses and minuses into an account. And that's what you do. And that ledger is hosted on all computers across the world, right? There's not one central authority which controls the ledger. The ledger is shared by all these different computer servers around the world. Whereas if Wells Fargo or my bank uses a blockchain, they will control the blockchain. In a public blockchain, no one controls it because that ledger is distributed among all these different computers. That's the difference between a public blockchain and a private one. And basically, this is from Reuters. A blockchain is a database that is shared across a network of computers. It records, once a record has been added to the chain, it is difficult to change. It's immutable, which means it cannot be changed. To ensure that all copies of the database are the same, the network makes constant checks. All these nodes get together and they always cross-check. Blockchains have been used to underpin cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, and there's other uses of the blockchain. We'll talk about that real briefly, but with home buying, NFTs. And so we're not going too far into this, but this is a record, a transaction. It's added, it's a block which is added to a set of, this is a data, this is a record, and it's added to a block, and this is my chain, right? Let me get a better picture of this. This record belongs to a block which is part of the network. There's a better screen. Here we go. This is a better one. So here is a block of transactions, and that block has a hash value. We're going to talk about this in a sec. Has a hash value from the preceding block and a hash value on this block, which then becomes the hash value on the next block. The Bitcoin blockchain, let's use Bitcoin for a second here. There are a bunch of blockchains in the world. There's Ethereum, there's Bitcoin, there's Solana, there's Cordova. There's all these blockchains. You in the court of law, you will not be engaged in knowing about these blockchains when you have a criminal case or a civil case. You have your litigants teach you this in briefings or with an expert. But to give you the vocabulary, these blockchains are not, they're not part of typically they're not going to be important for your case. The most important part of the blockchain will be it's immutable, which means the data on the blockchain, when there's a transaction that's relatable to a sender or receiver, is immutable, which means no one can interfere or change the data on the blockchain. So unlike anything else, like an email or whatever caution you have on electronic evidence, when you have evidence from a blockchain, it cannot be changed. And it's because of the hash value. All right. The point here is every single piece of information on a blockchain is immutable, which means it cannot be tampered with. And I will tell you how sensitive it is. So let me give you we have War and Peace here. I'm gonna give you a case. I was involved last year on a murder case where a United States citizen was murdered here in Pakistan. The investigators took two phones from a defendant and one phone from the victim. Break the phone to get into the phone. So they sent the phones to Quantico in the United States with the FBI. The FBI imaged the phones, which means they got all the data as is without anyone looking at it yet. And when they imaged it, they put a hash value on it. Then they got into it and made copies of what was on the phone. And they sent those copies to the investigators and prosecutors and defense counsel. Right. And the reason we know, when they come into court, the reason the judge can feel confident that none of the information presented by the prosecutors was tampered with by law enforcement is because the hash value on the copy matches the hash value from the image. And this is how sensitive the hash value is. I have a copy of War and Peace, which is a pretty big book. I think I have the next slide here. It's a pretty big book. War and Peace is a pretty big book. And I think it's like a 1,000-page novel. And if you have a comma, if someone goes in there, let's just say I have original hash, I hash the War and Peace book, and then I take that War and Peace and I change a comma on one of the pages. It changes the entire hash value. And I'm going to give assurances to the court. So when I image my phone, I put a hash value on the phone. That hash value is secure because when I look at my copy, if the hash value equals the hash value of the original image, nothing was tampered. And we know it's not tampered because they match. And just a slight comma change or slight change of a capitalization of a word will change the entire hash value. That's important because when we see the blockchain has these hash values. Let me go back. Has these hash values down here. And subsequent, as these blocks of information goes from one block to another block to another block to another block, the hash value, if it changes, someone has changed the blockchain. And not only can they not change the blockchain, but no one's ever changed the blockchain. But if the hash was changed, you would know it because you can compare the block. All right. I think, went way too far, and I promise you not to get too far into the weeds, but the main lesson here is information on a blockchain is immutable. So if a prosecutor presents you information from the blockchain, it was not. We're not talking about whether or not it's admissible from hearsay or foundation or liability. It's authentic, and that's criteria number one for admissibility. Is it authentic? It has not been doctored by law enforcement. I'm not saying it matches, it clears the hurdle for hearsay and other objections, but it does clear the hurdle for authenticity. All right, let's get through to, all right, let's talk about, because we want to get into crypto. All right. I'm gonna blow through this real quick. All right. So where did crypto come in? So the reason we want to talk about blockchain is blockchain and crypto they're synonymous with each other. Crypto would not exist without blockchain, and blockchain would not exist without crypto. So then where did crypto come from and why now? And so back in 2008, 2009, there was an event, the global financial crisis, that emanated in the United States. And then the response to that was Satoshi Nakamoto released the Bitcoin blockchain, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And the peer-to-peer cash system, the number one thing it solved was a double spend solution. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but basically, Nakamoto with Bitcoin solved the double spend. And what I mean by double spend is if I have a coin and I want to buy a motorcycle from person A and a motorcycle from person B, I could have used the same Bitcoin. I could use it twice. And that creates a problem for any currency. Because if I paid cash, I lose my cash. But with Bitcoin, I tell them, here's my Bitcoin, but then I use that same Bitcoin to buy motorcycle number 2. So it's called the double spend problem. And everyone was trying to figure it out with electronic currency years before Bitcoin, years. But Nakamoto was able to figure it out and released it as a crypto Bitcoin blockchain. So that's what Nakamoto did. He solved the double spend problem. Like I said, blockchain and crypto, unlike the dark web, crypto and blockchain are like brother and sister. You can't have one without the other. You have to have them both. You have to have them both together. And blockchain wouldn't exist. The public blockchain wouldn't exist. I'm going to tell you why the blockchain would not exist without crypto. Because when you have a private blockchain, say your bank, let's just use a bank. Let's use Wells Fargo Bank. When you have a private blockchain, someone has to go in there and verify the transactions. On a blockchain, it records transactions every 10 minutes. So in 10-minute block, every 10 minutes, it records a block of transactions. Someone has to make sure those transactions are accurate, timely, and then locks them into a blockchain. Well, Wells Fargo does it because it's their blockchain. They do it themselves, so they will pay to do it themselves. On a public blockchain, no one owns the blockchain. That blockchain is disseminated with all these people around the world. So why would anyone do the work to verify the transactions, the sender, the receiver, the amounts, who has enough money, who does the verification? Well, crypto was the payment system to help verify the information on the blockchain. So here's the blockchain recording all these transactions, and crypto is used as an incentive, as a payment system to whoever verifies the information will get crypto as a payment method. And so, for example, on the Bitcoin blockchain, to verify a 10-minute block, if you are lucky enough to beat out everyone else to verify the information, you get 6 new Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin today is worth $30,000 per coin. So in a 10-minute work, for 10-minute work, you can make $180,000. Right. So that's where crypto comes in. Crypto is the incentive for someone to verify the information on their blockchain. They are together like brothers and sisters. All right. Like I said, like the dark web, the only relationship with crypto is it's just a method of payment. That's all it is. It's a method of payment. The dark web and the crypto have nothing to do with each other except for a method of payment. All right. I'm gonna blow right through. We're gonna go through this. All right. So here is a centralized account. Centralized account wants to give Alice $10. So you could do a Venmo, Cash App. You could do a wire transfer. Bob sends Alice $10. It goes through a bank. It goes through a clearinghouse, and it goes to Alice. This bank will verify the information. It's a centralized system. Easy, right? Visa does it. Visa does transactions. I think they do 63,000 transactions per second. So this thing happens quick, right? But in a public blockchain, there is no centralized person to do it. It goes through a network of other computers, which takes time. It takes time to go through this computer network. So without a centralized administrator, who does this? Well, the whole system does, and that's where Nakamoto was able to develop this. We're getting too, I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but that's difference. Centralized, decentralized. And this is the public blockchain right here. Decentralized. No one controls it, and it has to be verified by a whole bunch of different computers. Whereas your bank here does it all in one shot. All right. Here's some blockchain. Don't worry about the, I'm just going to talk about some of the big ones here. You guys have heard this, some of this vocabulary. A distributed ledger means it's not housed in one central authority. It's distributed among thousands and thousands of computers. The blockchain is just the recordation of the ledger, the debits and credits. It stores records in blocks. Literally, it's a chain of blocks, 10 minutes long. Every blockchain is 10 minutes long. Nodes are computers that run blockchain software. They host it. Miners and verifiers are the ones who verify the transactions. And then forks are when the computers are not in agreement and it may cause a fork. We're going to talk about some of the consequences in a bit, but I want you to remember forks are not a good thing. Forks are bad. Forks are bad. And then there's a consensus algorithm, and that's when all the computers come to an agreement and they verify a 10-minute block and they move on. All right. Here's some examples of cryptocurrencies. We have Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the granddaddy of them all. Bitcoin was the very first one. And there are three types of cryptos. There's Bitcoin, there's altcoins, and there's stable coins. Altcoins can be broken up into two different kinds of coins. There's a blockchain backed coin, which means there's a blockchain backed up by that crypto, or crypto is used for this one specific blockchain technology. And then there's meme coins. There are 30,000 coins on the market, 30,000. Almost all of them are what we call meme coins. And another term for meme coins is what it's a crap coin. There's nothing backing up the meme coin, right? And so when you hear about all this investment and all this people getting into the crypto market, most of the time they're investing in meme coin. Dogecoin, the Dogecoin, the picture of a dog on it, that's what we call a meme coin. That's the Elon Musk coin. We'll talk about that in a bit. And the last category is a stable coin. A stable coin is backed by a central authority. It could be a government, could be a bank, but it's stable because it's backed by authority. Okay. Fiat currency, this is what we think about, dollars and coins, and then crypto not backed by governments. And the big thing is the reason fiat currencies are stable is because they have governments with tanks and planes and guns and policy backing up their coins. There's nothing backing up crypto, nothing whatsoever backing up crypto. So when crypto loses value or gains value, it's all based upon markets. It's nothing based, most of the time it's scams, but we'll talk, but there's no government authority behind it, none behind crypto, right? Where fiat currency is, they're backed by governments. They're backed by some authority. All right. And there's bad actors, right? So we want to talk about, and this is my time to say there's nothing to worry about with crypto. And the reason there's nothing to worry about crypto is because bad guys still use other more reliable methods to money launder and to terror finance. And for example, the Hawala network is the #1 resource for terror finance folks to finance their terrorism activities. By far, the #1 way. And there's no reason for a terror group to not use the Hawala network when they've been using it, because we have yet to penetrate successfully the Hawala network. And if you guys, I'm not going to spend time on the Hawala network. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the network, but it's an ingenious way to launder money and to help to finance terror. It's an ingenious way. It's impossible unless we have an informant or undercover operation into the Hawala network. It's impossible for us to counteract the Hawala network. All right. Most criminals still today still use the financial sector. They still use banks to do their thing because there's thousands and thousands of transactions happening right now at this very second. And unless we know that transaction is criminally motivated, there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, transactions happen every single day which are illegal, and we won't know about it unless there is either a criminal event, a victim telling us about it, or an STR, or some other mechanism that tells us that this transaction was a bad transaction. So criminals still use the financial sector to commit their crimes. Bad guys still use NGOs and charities to launder proceeds, which is a very popular thing among, especially in the state of the Philippines. People use charities all day long to launder money. Shell companies are a popular way. Cash couriers, to this day, 95% of drugs sold in the United States, 95% of drugs sold in the United States is laundered back to Mexico with cash couriers. So they still use bulk cash smuggling in the United States to launder their money. They don't use crypto. They don't use banks. They literally put cash in a car and drive it south. And unless someone stops them or unless someone knows about it, they get across the border. And what's causing us to think that crypto is this enormous criminal enterprise or encourages crime is because we fear it, not because we don't understand it. There's no evidence that crypto is any more popular or is becoming the de jour way of doing money laundering or terror finance. Like I told you before, criminals still use these methods, predominantly still use these methods way more than crypto. You'll see a graph later on about the percentages in a sec. Crypto is used though for scams, and we'll talk about scams in a bit. And here's two examples. In July 2016, a Syrian-based militant, he raised thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, but only about $1,000 was transferred using Bitcoin. And then the Buffalo shooter in the United States, he literally, when interviewed, said he was avoiding using crypto because he knew you can track crypto. So people don't use bad guys don't use crypto. Bad guys don't. I'm not saying predominantly they do not use crypto. They still use traditional methods to raise and transfer money. All right, and this is why crypto. I'm going to walk you through some of these big things. We're running out of time here. I promise to be. I'm going to jump to my adoption phase. Sorry about that. I promised the host here would be done here, so I can do questions and answers. But I'm gonna get to adoption. All right. We fear crypto because we don't understand it and we're just afraid of it. But I want to make sure we all understand crypto is not going to be a widely adopted means of exchange anytime soon. And there's some real good reasons for that. And one is today, usually I ask this question for the group, but the world GDP today, the world gross domestic product is $81 trillion. $81 trillion is in the world economy. 24 of that is the US, 22 trillion is China. So just two countries by itself have half of the world GDP. But of that world GDP, 81 trillion, only 6 trillion of that is fiat currency, which means coins and dollar bills and physical currency. 75 trillion dollars, US equivalent of US dollars, is electronic commerce already. We already live in an electronic commerce world. There is absolutely no need to have crypto, no need for anyone to transact in crypto because we already live in electronic commerce. We already live in a world with electronic currency. The other problem, I flipped through this real fast, but I want to talk about the 51% attack. So when miners, you guys heard stories about miners in around the world, and miners are people who verify information on the blockchain. And when you verify information on the blockchain, you are rewarded with crypto. Well, to be a successful miner nowadays, you have to buy a bunch of computers and servers, and it requires a lot of money and assets. And these miners become very powerful. Back in the day when Bitcoin first started, there were millions and millions of miners. Today, there's only a few thousand. They estimate that by 2030, so about 6-7 years from now, there's only going to be about 100 miners in the world. That is a problem, because if 51% of the miners were to collude, were to get together and talk to each other and agree, like the OPEC cartel, let's just call it the OPEC cartel. If they were to agree on what the blockchain information should be, they could literally take money from your wallet without you saying anything about it, without you having any recourse whatsoever. So we have what we call a 51% attack problem. So if 51% of all the miners colluded, they can rewrite the blockchain. Remember, I told you the blockchain can't be changed. Well, it's immutable. It can be under the rare circumstance if 51% of the miners were to collude. You couldn't have that in today's financial sector. You wouldn't be able to have that. And if that were to happen, you would have the local law enforcement, the FBI or Pakistan FIA, you would have enforcement officers shutting down that banking institution for collusion and ruining people's accounts or taking money from their accounts. So you wouldn't have that in today's finance. You could have that with crypto. Theft and hacks. We're going to talk about wallets in a bit, but all it takes is a $5. Let's walk through it. If I call it the $5 wrench problem. So if someone were to walk up to you with a wrench and say to you, "Give me your banking information, or I'm going to beat you with this wrench," you'll probably most likely give that person your banking information, and they go and steal your money. Well, you have recourse, because you would tell the bank, "I'm a victim of theft," and the bank will reimburse you, and the bank will step in as the victim, financial victim, for any possible recovery in the future. But there's recourse for you. Your bank will step in and assist you in recovering your funds, as long as you support the fact that you were a victim of a theft. Well, if someone does the same thing with crypto, if someone walks up to you and you have a crypto wallet, and you have $30,000, equivalent of $30,000 in your crypto wallet, someone comes up to you with a wrench and says, "I will beat you unless you give me your password to your crypto wallet." Well, if you give them your crypto wallet information, they take your crypto, there's no recourse for you. There's no one you can complain to. There's no bank is going to reimburse you. I mean, you'll file a police report, a complaint, but there's no recourse financially for you. Unlike the bank, if you lost your money from your account, will reimburse you. There's no recourse. If you lost your money in your crypto wallet, you're out, you're done, you're over. There is no recourse for you. And that is a scary proposition for everyone. This is why mass adoption is far from being secure for crypto, because if you're telling me that I could be victimized, someone can steal my money and I have no recourse financially for it, I'm not going to ever buy crypto. I'll just keep my money in my financial institution where it's secure. Right? So that's theft and hacks. Scams and frauds. Scams and frauds, there's a hockey stick. There's always been scams and frauds, but now it's been spiked. As soon as crypto came on the market, scams and frauds have been the du jour thing of the day. We'll talk about it. I said about rug pulls, fake cryptos in the world. The biggest one was Elon Musk, who was on the record saying Dogecoin was a good investment, or he praised Dogecoin. And Dogecoin is what we call a shit coin. There's no blockchain backing Dogecoin. So everyone started to invest in Dogecoin. And then as soon as everyone invested and the price of Dogecoin went up, he sold all his Dogecoin and he made millions of dollars in profit. We call that a pump and dump. and there's things like pump and dumps and rug pulls. Scams and frauds are prevalent with cryptos. Prevalent. Volatility. I don't have a stat, but volatility is, it took 85 years for the US dollar to double in value, or to double its inflationary impact. What I mean by that is a dollar in 85 years for a dollar in 1950. It took 85 years for that dollar in 1950 adjusted for inflation, because now it's $2. So, but adjusted for inflation, took 85 years for that to happen. 85 years for it to double its inflationary impact. It took 85 years. Crypto, it deflated and inflated within 10 months, 250%. That is mass volatility. And when you have mass volatility, like for example, when crypto was worth 62,000, went down to 17,000, Ethereum went to 18,000, down to 6,000. You cannot have a currency for transaction if the volatility is so wild, because to build an economy, to build transactions for a buyer and seller to conduct their business, they have to have reliability that currency is going to have a stable value over time. Now, you guys can see that with the rupee. So when the rupee goes up in value, I mean, we have inflationary impacts here in Pakistan. It's not good for the economy. But that value isn't changing like it did change for crypto. Crypto went from a Bitcoin went from $7,000 in a 10-month period, went from $7,000 to $60,000. You can't have a valuation that skyrockets that way. And then it tumbled right back down. That's some serious volatility, and no economy can survive if they adopt it. Ecuador, the only country in the world which adopted crypto as its main currency, is in financial stress. It's in massive financial stress because it adopted Bitcoin as its official currency. Transaction time, it's another reason why adoption won't happen. Visa can do, I don't have a slide here, but Visa can do thousands and thousands of transactions per second. The number of transactions on the block is, it takes 7 seconds per transaction. 10 minutes on average for the verification. It takes 7 seconds for the transaction to be completed, 10 minutes for the verification. What I mean by that is when you go to Starbucks, you go to a coffee shop and you want to buy coffee, the barista, it takes 10 minutes for that transaction to be recorded. 10 minutes for the coffee shop to verify that you have a required number of money to buy the cup of coffee. Whereas Visa will take you instant. You can do that in less than 2 seconds with Visa. So when you go buy coffee, it's going to take you 10 minutes to get your hot cup of coffee, because it takes 10 minutes for the verification to happen. And the cost per transaction, the average cost, not for Bitcoin, but the average cost of all cryptos is $20. There's a $20 fee, that goes on top of that. So Bitcoin's a little bit different. We're going into why Bitcoin's a little bit different, but the average cost per transaction is $20. Now, that's not a big deal when you're buying a Tesla, because at one time you could buy a Tesla with Bitcoin, but that's not a big deal when you buy a big ticket item. But it does matter about your Starbucks. So when you go buy your $4 cup of coffee, it now becomes $24. And so these are the reasons why crypto is not going to be widely adopted. One, we already have electronic commerce. There's the fear of a 51% attack. There's theft and hacks, scams and frauds, volatility, transaction time, cost per transaction. And there still is a need for window banking. There still is a need for, I mean, we all have cash flow, which means we all have jobs, but we don't have, most of us do not have independent wealth, which means we can't go out and buy our home outright. We just can't go down to the market, to the car dealership and buy a Maserati with our cash. We don't have that kind of wealth. Most people do not have that kind of wealth, but we do have cash flow, which means we could make payments, right? And well, you can't, there's no such thing as having loans with crypto, but banks give loans because banks take depositor money, pulls them together and give you loans and mortgages and car loans. And that's how they make their money on interest. So there's always going to be a need for window banking. There is no ability for crypto to ever lend money. Everyone's been trying to figure out a way to do it, but there's no ability for that to happen today. So, and no one has, there's been no successful blockchain technology to advance a lending opportunity like what a bank does. And there's the environmental concerns. To verify information on the blockchains takes as much power as it to power the Netherlands. And that's how much power it takes, a lot of energy. So if you're concerned about global warming, you're concerned about how much coal is being used, if you're upset about black outage because there's not enough coal or power in a certain community, you can look to crypto and like, why are you spending all this energy to verify blockchain when I need to have an AC going, or I need to have my industry pumping out products? I can't because you guys are using all this energy to verify the blockchain. So these are the reasons why the adoption of crypto, in my opinion, this is my opinion only, is not coming. And so right now, crypto is used by very, very few people, and is used for frauds. And one of the biggest frauds is the island. I just want to give you a case. This is a brochure for the island of Poyes. It's a made-up island in the Cayman Islands. It's a made-up island, but I just like frauds have been around for a long time. All right, and here, someone drew a picture of it. This is way back in 1800s, and someone drew a picture of what it looks like. It's a complete fraud, But now with crypto, people are making all these frauds they got this new cryptocurrency with this new technology. Majority of crypto communication in the marketplace is fraudulent. The majority of communication about crypto is fraudulent. All right, let's talk about wallets. All right, so here's two examples of when someone buys crypto. Let me actually go to the, there's three ways to buy crypto. You could buy it on the exchanges. You could buy it through ATMs and kiosks and peer-to-peer. The exchanges, 95% of people buy crypto via the exchanges. And the exchanges is like Coinbase, and you open an account, link your bank account, pick your wallet, and you can do business. And the best thing about exchanges is it's KYC. They have to know your customer. And they collect all this data, which means when they collect this data, your law enforcement officer can track them. We can track them as law enforcement officers and prosecutors. We can track people when they use crypto. Bad guys think we can't, but we can. Because to transact any business with crypto, you have to do it with an exchange, and it's KYC, right? Here's an example of a block on the blockchain. A lot of data, which means nothing to you and I. Here's a more of a clear-cut version. Transaction ID, sender. Let me go back, sorry. Sender, recipient, a change, how much crypto was used, and here's a fee. So this is all the information you get on a block in the blockchain. And here's how it typically works with dark web guy. Here's my seller. And he sells things on the dark web. So here he is selling, and I've got buyers here who buy, buyer A, buyer B, buyer C, and they buy. And those transactions are verified by miners, and they get paid. Miners get paid. They get 25 Bitcoin, for example, for verifying. And here's my law enforcement guy. My law enforcement guy tracks the IP address to these guys, and that's how we do our cases. There's nothing crazy complicated about this. There's nothing crazy complicated. Just because someone uses the blockchain Bitcoin thinking that they're anonymous, it's not so. Now, that does not say we don't have problems. There are two issues that remain when someone uses crypto. And those two issues are the identity of the person and the actual goods being sold. Those are always two problems, but we're not too concerned with that. And the reason we're not too concerned about that is because cases come to us 4 or 5 different ways. A victim complaint, which means I already know who the person the fraudulent money is going to. There is an event. There is law enforcement intelligence, a confidential informant, or a cooperating witness. And so I've got, or an STR. So I'm not too worried about being figured out looking at the block. I'm not too worried about this. I'm not too worried about knowing who my sender is or who my recipient is, because I don't start my investigation by looking at the blockchain. No one ever starts an investigation looking at the blockchain. All right, let me get to, there are 3 red flags. There's a peer-to-peer transaction. That's a red flag. Privacy coins, we're not going to spend any time on privacy coins. And there's foreign exchanges. The reason foreign exchanges are a red flag is because they're not required to know their customer. So you can transact in foreign exchanges and no one collects data on you. The number 1 location for foreign exchanges is Russia. So there are some uglies. I'm going to get to frauds. There is, in 2021, this is US, there's 4,300 complaints with losses of 429 million on confidence romance scams, rug pulls, Ponzi schemes, investor frauds, securities frauds. And then you have thefts, right? So we have people who hack into the system and steal money from the crypto exchanges. So these are massive problems, because when theft happens, when these things happen, there's no recourse for the victim, financial recourse. They can make a complaint, but there's no financial recourse for the victim. Back in the day when Silk Road this is the first dark web market, 2013, hundreds of millions of dollars in transactions using crypto. Alpha Bay, over $1 billion in transactions using crypto. And then Hydra, which is last year, was over $5.2 billion using crypto. These are all black market. These are all taken down and shut down. I mean, that's the FBI stat. Let me talk about this. This is a very, so in 2021, there was roughly there's roughly $14 billion in illegal activity using crypto. $14 billion. Of that, you see in the box on the insert, 8 billion of that was scams. 8 billion was scams. 4 billion was stolen money. Only 2 billion was darknet. Only 2 billion. 12 billion of the 14 billion, 12 billion was scams and stolen funds. So when I say darknet and the dark web, we need to stop worrying about crypto being used in the dark web. Is it used? Yes, but it's used on the surface and deep web far more than the dark web, far more. That's our problem, is that people fall to the scams and stolen funds all the time. And then Terra Finance, it doesn't even register. It has never registered. Terra Finance individuals, defendants and suspects who use to help finance terror, they don't use crypto. And the reason they don't use crypto is there's no need. They've got the Hawala network, they got NGOs, they've got shell companies, they've got cash couriers. There's absolutely no need for them to use crypto, which can be traced by law enforcement. So I want to emphasize that crypto is still, it's primarily criminal element is going to be scams and stolen funds. That's where majority of the crime happens with crypto. And then I have a slide here. Let me get through. Those are some big ones. And we're running out of time here. I'm going to shut this down for questions and answers. I promise to be an hour and a half here. This is about seizure. I'm going to get to this. Here's my famous, I'll end with this slide. So in the United States, we had, when law enforcement provides you with a search warrant and they want us to do a search, you may start, I've been teaching this, you may start getting language in your search warrant affidavits asking for physical wallets and documents. And the reason documents for passwords and things like that. And this is why it's important. You'll see things about wallets in your search warrant affidavits. There was a search of a criminal case in the United States, not my case. I wish it was my case, but this is the same case. These two are the same case. They did a search warrant. In the search warrant affidavit, they asked the judge for permission to seize currency, seize documents, seize wallets, including crypto wallets. In the floorboard of this house, there was $600,000 in U.S. currency. By itself, that was remarkable. That is one of the best seizures, and both these funds were forfeited, by the way, but it's one of the best seizures that anyone could ever ask for in any criminal case. $600,000 in the floorboard of a home. But the investigators went through training with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we trained them on looking for crypto wallets. And crypto wallets, a physical wallet, will look like a USB drive. Like a USB. I think there was a quick, let me go back in time. Let me go back to, stay with me 1 second. I'm going to show you what a physical wallet looks like. Yeah, you're asking why this is out of order, I know. So we're right there. There we are. This is what a physical wallet looks like. That little blue thing right in the middle. That's a physical, looks like a USB. Oftentimes, I always say USB, it's not a USB, but that's what a USB looks like, a physical crypto wallet looks like, right? So my office, these officers asking for a search warrant, asked for permission from the court to seize any physical crypto wallets. Well, that's important because in the house of where the $600,000 was found, let me get to it in a second here. In the house, in the kitchen, in this coffee can, there was a USB type wallet, crypto wallet. On that wallet was $3 billion, $3 billion with a B. And we seized in total $3.6 billion. But of that one wallet, if my officers, if the FBI officers, investigators were not trained on looking for crypto or the wallets, they would have never known. And criminals use wallets to store, they don't necessarily use it to facilitate their crimes, they use it to store the proceeds of the crime instead of storing it in a financial institution. Instead of going down to the local bank and putting money into an account, they would just use it to store money on a crypto wallet. And so that's a convenient way to store a significant amount of money without the financial institution. Because if you store that kind of money, if you deposited $3 billion in your local bank, your bank will create an STR, a suspicious transaction report, which then would be disseminated to law enforcement. And then law enforcement, typically FIA, will look at it and go, we want to go knock on the door of someone who deposited $3 billion into the bank, right? So that becomes a smoke signal for someone to go investigate. Well, criminals know that. To avoid that kind of disclosure and reporting, they like to store their crypto, their money in crypto wallets. So crypto isn't necessarily a method of committing a crime, but it's a great way for them to store their assets away from law enforcement. And I'm gonna end, I guess one more thing, I'm gonna end with pig butchering. And this is one of the biggest scams using crypto. And so remember we talked about that, the $14 billion of crypto and criminal activity. $14 billion is what crypto is being used. Crypto is $14 billion of criminal activity. Of that, $8 billion was scams, and $6 billion of it was $4 billion of it was theft and frauds. So of my scams, pig butchering is a big one. And what pig butchering is, you most likely, I get it. I got one today. You'll get a text message from somebody who says, hey, your doctor's appointment is set at 6 o'clock today, or I'll meet you for dinner at 5. And you write back, if as soon as you text back wrong number, you may often get a response back saying, oh, I'm so sorry for bothering you. And they start the communication with you. Now, it may not work with you, but it works with a lot of people. And that communication starts off with a friendly kind of, oh, I'm sorry, I got the wrong number, to start building a relationship. And oftentimes, especially when these perpetrators know it's a guy on the other line, they will send a fake picture of a female. And that fake, and the female looks attractive, and these people start figuring out, oh, this is a possibility for me. And over a period of time, that person will ask the victim to open up a crypto account or a wallet. And this is how the frauds start happening. We call it pig butchering because it's a Chinese term, literally translated into pig butchering, but it's not, the term is called shashupan, or that's the term. It literally translates into pig butchering because you fatten up the pig before you butcher the pig. So that's what's happening with, it's a lot of romance scams, and they prefer to use crypto because the crypto is sent to a wallet on a foreign exchange, which does not collect KYC. So none of that has anything to do with the darknet. None of that is anything on this Tor browser stuff. All that is on the surface web using emails and text messages and things like that. So crypto is just another way of paying a fraud money that he fraudulently took from you. And so that's all crypto is being used for. Is it wrong? Yeah, sure. And is crypto is being used by criminals? For sure. But criminals use currency like the dollar and pesos and rupees all day too. So this is no difference. What's nice about crypto, though, I want you to let you know, law enforcement does have the ability to track. We do have the ability to track. And so, but most of my big time drug dealers, drug cartels, and terror finance guys will not be using crypto. Crypto is pretty much reserved for scammers and fraudsters. That's where crypto is used for. It's also used for ransomware. So I'll leave with one last story, I guess. I keep saying that, one last thing. One last thing, last year or 2 years ago, Colonial Pipeline, which supplies natural gas, liquefied natural gas on the eastern seaboard of the United States, its system was hacked. And so the pipeline shut down. So no natural gas was being delivered up the eastern seaboard because someone hacked into it, and they demanded $5 million in ransom. And they told the company that you need to pay us in crypto, Bitcoin. And the company contacted the FBI, and the FBI said, yes, go pay them $5 million in crypto. And the company did. They got access back to their system, but the FBI tracked the crypto and arrested all 10 people within a day because we could track the crypto. We could easily track the crypto. So it's not the panacea for criminals as we think it is. It's not. And just to put one more, just to stamp this down, crypto in the future here, and all expectation is it will not be adopted widely anytime soon. So it's still being used by scammers and fraudsters, and that's what the majority of that crypto is used for. So anyway, that I promised to be an hour. I'm over my hour because I want to do some Q&A. So does anyone have any questions? I went like lightning fast through this, and this is meant to be, I've told you I see this before, and sadly, this is usually a week-long course. And we usually do hands-on with the online markets and the trading platforms, and actually work with wallets and stuff, but we don't have the time for that. So I apologize for going rocket fast through this thing. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or anything?
Jettie,
Quick questions, and Jay, go ahead.
thank you very much for a very informative talk on the topic. We have got some questions. One question is regarding when you talk about the Ecuador going through the financial crunch, and the way it used to come out of that is to legalize the Bitcoins, the cryptocurrency. So to what extent they were successful in that endeavor?
Well, crypto, we didn't have to make it legal. Crypto is always legal in the United States. There's nothing inherently wrong with crypto, and crypto, nothing in the law, nothing in US law. I can speak intelligently about US law because maybe giving an example for Pakistan, but there's nothing to stop a seller to accept crypto as payment. There's nothing to stop a seller from accepting to offer you services in exchange for a motorcycle. You can do barter system all day long. There's nothing that stops us from accepting different things as payment for one thing. So crypto is just another way of accepting payment for goods sold or services rendered. There's nothing different about crypto than cash or your motorcycle or doing chores or whatever it is you're exchanging for a good. There's nothing illegal about it. Now, criminals use it to commit illegal activity, but there's nothing to make legal because it's just another way of accepting payment. If seller wants to accept payment using crypto, that's on them. That's on them to accept it. So there's nothing for us to make legal. It was always legal in the United States. Now, is it regulated? That's the question. Is it regulated? And right now, that's the big question in the United States, because if it's treated as a currency, it's unregulated. If it's treated as a security, it needs to be regulated by the SEC. And so that is the big debate going on in the US right now. You guys may have seen some stories come out of the US, but that is the big debate right now in the United States. How to treat crypto, a currency or as a security. I blew right by that in my presentation, but that is, so right now, crypto is still 100% legal and it will be 100% legal going forward. The question is, will it be regulated? And that's a different question.
Thank you. Mike, there's another question with regard to the dark web and the blockchain. Can the blockchain be cracked?
Unless quantum computer comes online, I know Google's got a quantum computer, but I shouldn't say impossible. I keep saying the word impossible. It's improbable to block the blockchain, because the blockchain itself, the hash values on each block are 64 characters long, and it's enormously complicated to hack that block, the hash value. And by the time you uncover or hack into, let's just say you could, by the time you do it, the block has moved on in 15, 16, 17 different blocks. And so whatever hash that you were able to break the code of, the block has already moved on well beyond that. So it becomes irrelevant for whatever you want to do. So for you to hack that block, you need to do it almost in real time. So you've got about 10 minutes to hack that block, to get into that block and change the data. And that becomes, unless you got a quantum supercomputer, it's extremely difficult. I'm not saying it won't be possible, but it's impossible. So right now, blockchain is a really secure method of transacting data for debits and credits. But remember, the blockchain is only useful. It's only useful when you're doing debits and credits, when you have a ledger. If you don't have a ledger requirement, you're not keeping track of ins and outs of anything, there's no need for anyone to use the blockchain. No need. And so, but it's to answer your question, it's improbable that anyone can ever break the blockchain. Now, your hacks, when people do hack, when you hear theft, they're not hacking the blockchain, they're hacking the exchanges. So the exchanges are like a business, like a bank. And so if you can get into the exchange, you can start getting into people's wallets, right? But the blockchain itself is improbable. People hack into the exchanges all the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Mike, there's a question. It's sort of saying again and again that, does the cryptocurrency help the governments to come out of the financial crunch? You specifically mentioned the Ecuador government legalizing the cryptocurrency. So did it help them to come out of their financial, crunch position?
No, matter of fact, it made it worse. And on top of that, it makes it worse for foreign investors to come in there and invest in the country, because the crypto itself is so volatile that you ruin the opportunity for stable currency. Is where you're to have a strong economy. One of the prerequisites is to have a stable currency. And Ecuador, going to Bitcoin, has a currency which wildly vacillates up and down in value. And so foreign investors, significant and important foreign investors, will never come into Ecuador to invest. Now, you will have companies invest in Ecuador because it's got natural resources. There are always going to be companies trying to take someone's oil or take someone's ore or take someone's lithium or whatever raw ore or material they have. There's always going to be someone trying to take that from a country, a third world country, for sure. However, for industry to come in there to build factories and industry, they shot themselves in the foot for adopting crypto. They were part of that big old movement that crypto is going to be the new way of the world, and they were crazy. That experiment is not working for them. That experiment has not worked for them. And so Ecuador is, I would think that within the next 5 or 10 years, they're going to try to pull themselves out of that fiasco.
Well, there's a participant from Haripur. He wants to take your take on a specific case which was decided by the District Court of America. That is securities versus XRP. I don't know if you have gone through that judgment or not, but that they want to take your view on that.
Yeah, so so they said it was not a security, and so the SEC has no ability to regulate, and that was not the Supreme Court. That was, I believe, that was a Court of Appeals, but that is an opinion about how XRP was being used. So XRP, we're getting into the weeds here, but XRP is not what we think of as a security. XRP is typically a bank-to-bank use of crypto. Is banks use it to with each other. So there's no security to invest. They were not sending it out into the world for investors to invest in. So it's a little bit different than, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana. So XRP is so when we hear crypto, keep this in mind. The SEC, whether or not it's regulated, is going to be case by case by case analysis. So every crypto is not the same. So Bitcoin is different than XRP. XRP is different than Ethereum. Ethereum is different than Filecoin. So each of these coins are going to have a different analysis of whether or not it's a currency or a security. And the Court of Appeals, I believe it was the Court of Appeals, said, I don't think it was the Supreme Court, but Court of Appeals said that the XRP was not a security, which meant the SEC could not regulate them. Doesn't mean it's illegal or anything. It just means that SEC, it doesn't come under the purview of the SEC.
Thank you. Well, we have got with us Hamesh Khan, a judge. He wants to ask a question. Hamesh, I'm going to unmute you. Please raise your question by yourself. Hamesh, can you hear us? You can write the same in the chat box as well. Yeah, there's a message.
As you're waiting, I'm sorry, guys. I flew in I got into Islamabad at 4 a.m. after traveling for 40 some odd hours. So if I'm a little jet lagged or a little spacey, I apologize. It's been a long few days flying in.
We appreciate that. Hamesh, are you hearing us? Can you please speak? No, I think there is some issue on his side. Mike, you have done a wonderful session, and there's a lot of information in the that is yet to be shared. I feel like there are many slides on which you can talk more. So we would go on. Yeah, we would go on with a second, round of this same continuation of this session. Subject to your
what I will do is I should have a scrubbed, what we'll call a scrubbed version of my PowerPoint slide. I'll give that to Yasir, and Yasir will disseminate it to everyone so they can have my slides, because there's a lot of things I did not cover. Yeah, which you guys can use it for reference.
Hamesh, you are unmuted. Can you speak, please? He's from Chitral, and I think there is some issues with internet there. Okay, we can move on. Is there any participant? Anybody can raise hand, and we should unmute him or her to raise the question.
Usually most judges will have a ton of questions for me. This is good. I mean, I was compelling in my advocacy.
Michael, how much it takes in the United States to finally decide a case regarding white collar crimes? How long it takes?
Oh, from the start. So if using a victim started case, if a victim came forward and talked about a crime, a scam against them, it would most likely take 2 to 3 years before the trial would start. And the reason that is because it takes a long time for us to get records from banks and financial institutions, and sometimes records are coming from overseas. And so it takes a long time for us, even in the United States, even dealing with US banks, it takes us a long time for us to get the records. And so our trials do not start, usually our trials will get continued until the prosecutor is ready to go with his trial. So we don't usually start a case until we're ready to go. I know in Pakistan, if a complaint's filed, the case will start pretty soon thereafter. And then, so in the US is a little bit different. We won't start it until we're ready to go. But we also have a continuity of trial, which means when the trial starts, it doesn't stop until it's over. So every day there's a trial. Every day we have trial until it's concluded. And I know in Pakistan, you could do a 1 day per 2 weeks. You know, there's no continuity, which is a different way of doing it. So it takes us 2 or 3 years. So I would assume if you have a case 2 or 3 years old, as on par with the United States. We may start it and stop it differently, but it'll be on par with what we do in the United States.
That's great. It means you take time in submission of the report before the court. It may take years, but once the report is submitted in the court continues on the continuous trial.
Yeah, the big difference I would say the big difference between the two countries is typically a defendant is usually out of custody on a white collar case. They're usually out of custody, and I couldn't speak intelligently what happens in Pakistan, but in the United States, most white collar defendants are out of custody in the United States unless we've arrested them overseas. If they came from overseas and they were extradited to the United States, we usually have a pretty good grounds of keeping them in custody because they're a flight risk. But that's one of the big differences too, I think.
Mike, last question that's regarding the trial, time consuming the trial. In Pakistan, we have some certain statutory period that's 14 days for submission of the report before the magistrate or the court after lodging of the FIR. And then the 3 further days are granted as a grace period for submission of the report. The investigation officer may take some little more time, but not beyond certain time, 2 or 3 months. He has to submit the final report, and then the court commences the trial. The trial may take years. What about the murder trials in America? How long it takes to finally decide in the first court, which is the court of trial court, after submission of the report, complete report?
Yeah. So I mean, this has always been a question. So in the United States, let's just use the same example. A complaint's filed pretty quickly. The law enforcement files a complaint. As a prosecutor, I'm allowed to dismiss without prejudice the complaint if I'm not ready. And so I will dismiss the case, and the court will know that I need more time. So instead of having the case pending, because sometimes during the investigation, we may realize the defendant, I don't have enough evidence to convict the defendant. So sometimes I would need more time. So if a complaint's been filed, I have the discretion as the prosecutor to dismiss the case without prejudice and then refile it when I'm ready to go. And so we're a little bit different in how we do it in the United States. But going forward, if there's a complaint filed of say a homicide, a murder, and I know who the defendant is, we pretty much, unless the defendant has exercised his speedy trial rights, the trial could be anywhere from, we may not start the trial for anywhere from 6 months to a year. But if the defendant has exercised their speedy trial rights, the Constitution of the United States dictates that we must have a trial within a certain period of time for a defendant when a complaint's filed or when an arrest has been made. We have to go forward pretty quickly. And so we are on the hot seat. Most defendants choose not to exercise speedy trial because most of the time it's not in their best interest to have a quick trial, because most of the time we've got them nailed to the proverbial post. So they'd want more time. Maybe their attorneys can punch hole in the case. Maybe they can get something thrown out as evidence. Maybe a witness changes story. Maybe a victim doesn't want to cooperate. And so the more time passes, the easier for them to defend their case. So oftentimes defendants will ask for a continuance of their case, because with passage of time is the prosecutor's worst evidence, is worse for the prosecution. Passage of time is bad for us because it's hard to get witnesses to memories fade, witnesses become unavailable, and so defendants usually want to continue. I don't know if that answers your question, but I choose, when there's a murder case, I choose to go pretty quickly on it, if I can. So
prosecution is very strong in America. It is to decide which one case is to be tried and which one is not. So that's not the case here in Pakistan. Though we are in the process of evolution, there are prosecution acts promulgated.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
it takes time.
Yeah, they have to know.
It takes time.
Yeah. Mike, we have a question on, I don't know whether you'll be able to answer it or not, but it's what sort of strategies are adopted to trace out such kind of monetary crimes, specifically in Pakistan? This is about Pakistani law and the strategies to trace out the white-collar crimes.
The ability to trace, is it ability to trace it? Is that what the question was?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same ability in the United States. We do subpoenas on the financial institutions. We talk to victims. If victims usually give us the bank records that supports the crime itself or cooperating witnesses. The difference between Pakistan and the US, the biggest difference is a lot of the banking information comes from overseas, from victims and defendants in Pakistan. So we have a lot of transactions happening in the United States or in the European Union, which will require from Pakistan authorities to do an MLA, a mutual legal agreement request, and so assistance request. So that takes a long time for that process to work itself out, because you guys are not the central hub of a lot of financial information. So a lot of that information comes from the United States and or the EU, which require the investigators and prosecutors have to do a lot of other things to do in compliance with treaties and agreements with different foreign governments. So you sitting on the court waiting for the prosecutor to give you information, just know that if the information comes from overseas, there's a lot of requirements that need to go in for us to get the information. It's not a quick thing for us, for prosecutors to get that information, because we have to go through MFA. MFA needs to go talk to our central authority and so forth and so forth. It takes a long time, but you guys have the same mechanisms of tracing as we do. But most of my white collar cases, most of them, I don't require a subpoena from banks. My victims, most of my cases are victim oriented. Most of my cases come from a victim who tells me, here's where the money went. And then I go trace that money using the victim's own records. So that's how I do most of my cases in the United States.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mike, we have run out of time already. It's
okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your valuable talk. We shall follow up with another session soon. And there's a request from the participants to share the presentation that we shall do, inshallah. And honorable judges, that's all we have to do today. This was it was a good talk. I hope you will capitalize on it and use it in your professional work as well as in your private life. You will use such such information shared by Mike Jettie. And we will come up with a second round of the webinar on the same topic, which will be more helpful, and he can elaborate more on, he can build on this session in the second phase, inshallah. Thank you all. Goodbye from Federal Judicial.
Can I add one thing? I just saw this comment on the. Can I just someone had? Can you hear me still? No.
Yeah, we are hearing you.
Okay, someone had a comment on. I just want to talk about this because this, I think it was Mr. Abisi. Is it Mr. Abisi who made this comment? And I'll leave with this
Mr.
one
Mansoor
comment.
Abbasi.
The comment was, in Pakistan, crypto is not interlinked with bank accounts. Blockchain is used to withdraw or transfer the same, meaning there's no record that can be traced out. I want, because we went right over this real quick. In Pakistan makes it illegal for the financial institutions to link your bank account with an exchange. And because of that, crypto has been pushed to peer-to-peer transactions, which makes it very difficult for anyone in Pakistan to trace crypto in Pakistan, which makes it extremely difficult. So it's not because of the prosecutors who haven't presented evidence to you about tracing, it's because the law prevents the banks from tracing it with the exchanges. So that's a very good question, a very good comment from him. And I want to stress that. And as said before, I will scrub the PowerPoint slide and give it to Yasir, and Yasir will disseminate it to everyone with FJA, and FJA can disseminate it to everybody.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you, respected judges, and thank you, Jettie, for your valuable time.
Thank you, everyone.
Sir.
Bye-bye.